Oh my goodness. Welcome into the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 355. Escalate. And yeah. It sure has escalated, hasn't it? Oh man, this is one way to start off a year for sure. But yeah, welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch for the crazy things that are happening around the world. And there are certainly quite a few selections of those to come by, especially as we enter this new year. But yeah, welcome in, guys. Again, if this is your first time here, we watch for the crazy things happening around the world, and we're called to be watchmen. We're called to pay attention, so we're not caught off guard by things. And for those who have been around my channel, last night shouldn't have caught you off guard. We've been watching that. We've been tracking that for quite a few months now. But still, a lot of crazy things happening. But yeah, so we're called to be watchmen. That's what we do around here. And so if you're new, welcome in. And we pay attention to those things. And ultimately, we point people to the gospel of Jesus Christ, the salvation that only Christ can provide. And that's the most important part of what we do. So yeah, this is going to be a crazy one. Episode 355, Escalate. Now, it's interesting because I titled this before things started happening. Last night with the whole Venezuela situation, because there's been some other things that have been escalating. We're not going to be able to get to those. I had to shift gears as soon as that happened to talk about that stuff, but things are definitely escalating. And it's kind of funny because I was sitting there and it's like, you know what? The one thing I said to watch for in 2026 was to watch for the escalation of power shift, geopolitical power shift. For 2026. That's the thing that I was looking for. And 3 days into the year, it started happening. I didn't think it would start that fast, but it did. So it looks like that's the thing that we should be watching for sure. But yeah, so we'll be talking about the Venezuela situation. I got a lot of stuff to go over regarding that. So we'll take a look at what's going on there. We also got a couple things that we're going to look at before we get to the Venezuela thing. We'll get to the Venezuela stuff at the end. But we got a $100 million wartime recruitment campaign from ICE that we'll be taking a look at what's going on with that. We also got some more information regarding Australia, Bondi attack, and all that type of stuff happening over there. And then we also got an Israeli billionaire who's calling upon the First Amendment to be limited. Which is pretty interesting. We got the Royal Air Force who struck Syria. That just happened like an hour ago, or last night, or tonight, actually, a few hours ago. It just happened a couple hours ago. This has been a long day, so hang with me, guys. Try to get all this stuff organized. Then we also, again, we'll be taking a look at what's going on with the Venezuela situation. So there's a lot of things that we'll be covering there. So should be a good time. Should be a good time. Anyways, how y'all doing? You guys having a good Saturday? You guys having a good start to the year? Oh man, radar. Yeah, New Year's bomb bursts in the air. Yeah. Everybody talks about the ball drop, when in reality we should be looking at the bomb drop. That's how it should be going. So, anyways, hopefully you guys are doing well tonight. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and start off with what's going on with housekeeping, shall we?
Housekeeping?
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. And that's why we do this. That's the whole point of this show thing that we do, whatever you want to call it, is to get the gospel out to people. We're called to be watchmen. We're called to pay attention to what's going on. So again, we're not caught off guard, and we're aware of the things that are happening. And as things are progressing towards prophetic events that'll happen post-rapture into the day of the Lord. But at the same time, our most important thing that we're called to do is to share the gospel. So we utilize that in order to share the gospel, and liking, sharing, and subscribing does help to reach new people. And I've noticed past month specifically, there has been a significant increase of new people that are starting to come around here. And so glad to have you guys with us, and thank you for being here. So yeah, please like, share, subscribe if you guys can. If you want to, you can follow along on Rumble and Telegram as well. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be backup live streaming over on Rumble, and then Telegram, we post updates, announcements, and other little things here and there. Like, I don't necessarily do too much with posting news and stuff on the Telegram, but every once in a while when something comes across, I post it on there. Like last night, the attack, I let everybody know what was going on when that first went down. And then I also post like prayer requests and the Sunday funnies and all that type of stuff on Telegram. So follow along over there if you want to. If you don't like Rumble, you don't like Telegram, I completely understand. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything that's going on with the Wretched Watchmen channel. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams are always there, the announcements. If I'm taking a day off and I didn't tell you guys or something like that, I update the announcement page on there so you know what's going on. So I'm not getting flooded with a bunch of emails asking where I am. Just go to the website. You'll find the latest book to download, or not the latest book. Well, it is the latest book technically, but my free book that you can download there as well, and a whole bunch of other things. So head over there and bookmark the page so you're always up to date. If you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. So if you guys would like to help keep this going and allow me to do what I do, those links are below. Thank you guys for your support and your blessings and your prayers and encouragement. Again, you guys are the ones that make all this run. You guys are the ones that make it all free. And I thank you from every bottom and every inch of my heart. I don't remember how that saying goes. Anyways, you know what I mean. Thank you for that. And then Fridays, we do the Wretched Recaps. Those are just a video that I put up, about 20. This one was a little bit longer because there's a lot of stuff that I had to go through, but they're usually about 20 minutes where I go through 5 or 6 different news things that happened during the past week that we don't get to in the live stream. So make sure you don't pass those up. If you're skipping those thinking it's information you heard before, it's not. So make sure you guys check those out every Friday. The Wretched Recap. Good stuff. Excuse me, one second. My word. All right. If I sound a little nasally, I got some nasal drainage happening right now. So I'm not sick or anything. It's just draining. So I apologize if I sound a little nasally on that. It's the time of year, unfortunately. My body does not like cold, even if it's not very cold. My body just knows it's winter and it likes to do it at this time of year. So stupid. Please come soon, Lord Jesus. I want my new body. I want my new body. So, all right. That's all we got when it comes to housekeeping. Let's go ahead and get into the Wretched Weather Report, shall we? Since it is Saturday.
Everybody got their fancy hats? Let's go!
All right, so the Wretched Weather Report, what we do is we keep track of the trends of what's going on with weather, natural events, and things like that. And what is going on with this thing? Give me 1 second. There we go. And so what we do is we just keep track of what's going on when it comes to weather things. Earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, and tsunamis, and all that type of stuff. We just keep track of what's going on when it comes to natural events. As we know, these are part of the birth pains that are going to increase in size and frequency as we get closer and into the day of the Lord. So it's worth keeping track of what's going on, just so we're aware. Again, we're called to watch. We're called to be aware and not caught off guard when these things happen. And we'll know the timing of how far along, well, not necessarily how far along we are, but we know we're getting closer as we continue to watch these things. So we don't have a big one. A big update, weather update today, but we still got our earthquakes and our volcanoes that we're keeping track of what's going on. And so earthquakes, 5.5 magnitude and up. This past week, we got a few big ones. And we got a 6.2 in Puerto Santa, Peru. There's a 5.5 in Naze, Japan. A 6.0 in Miyako, Japan. 6.0 in the Southeast Indian Ridge. It's over there off the coast of Australia. Over in that area over there. 5.7 in Haines Junction, Canada. So Canada seems to be moving a little bit in that same region, that Haines Junction region. They got a big one a few weeks back, and there's been quite a bit of movement over there. So keep an eye on what's going on with Canada there. Canada E. Big one of the week, which I forgot to put the number on, is a 6.5. Thankfully, I remember what it was. 6.5 in Rancho Viejo, Mexico. Then there was a 5.5 in Santa Maria, Martinique, or Martinique. I don't know how to pronounce that. You know how it goes. Then there's a 5.9 in the Southeast Indian Ridge again. So that's what we got when we got the earthquakes happening. As far as volcanoes, we are up 3 from last week. So we were at 44 2 weeks ago, jumped down to 41. Now we're back up to 44 again. And so we're at the baseline of our usual global average, which is 44 to 48. And we have 6 in North America, 5 in South America, 2 in Europe, 2 in Antarctica, 3 in Africa, 18 in Asia, which is +2 from last week, and then 8 in Oceania, which is +1 from last week as well. So yeah, we're not in that extreme region or extreme number of volcanoes like we were there for a very long period of time. We're still kind of in the lower side of things, but nothing too dramatic there. And earthquakes, we're sitting pretty normal. A couple big ones, but for the most part, it's pretty normal. So yeah. And that's what we got as far as that goes. I know that there's tons of crazy weather and stuff happening. It's the time of the year. Snowstorms, there's the crazy rain and mudslides and stuff happening in California over there as well. So, and then tornadoes are ripping through Tornado Alley like they usually do at this time of year. I lived on the outskirts of Tornado Alley, so I know all about that stuff. But yeah, it's the usual stuff happening around this time of year. Doesn't make it any less easier for people who live in those regions, but nothing dramatic there. So that's all I got when it comes to the Wretched Weather Report. All right. Let's see here. Okay, you guys ready to get into this? Again, we'll get to the Venezuela stuff at the end. We got a few things that we're going to take a look at first before we get there. Where's my pew pew? Do I need a pew pew? What's going on? Is there... I don't know what's going on. Yeah, my mods are there, so if the tools see a problem, they'll handle it. All right. Oh, Sasha. Asking for Sasha. She's back there. We can't get a good thing. My big head is in the way. And just...
Shh. Sasha is asleep.
She's sleeping, right? It's nap time for Sasha. So... All right, let's go ahead and get into the first thing. Okay, I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, Sasha, she's napping right. My big fat head's in the way. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to talk about this that just came out. And this is as propaganda and as what's the word? I can't necessarily think of the word, but this is just going right along with the fascist takeover that's currently happening in our country. So we'll just say it that way. But yeah, so we got ICE plans $100 million wartime recruitment push targeting gun shows, military fans for hire. A strategy document shared among immigration officials details plans to use influencers and geo-targeted ads to supercharge their push to hire thousands of deportation officers nationwide. That's right. They're doing a $100 million wartime recruitment campaign to hire ICE agents inside the United States. Wartime. I didn't know that we were at war in our country. I had no idea. But again, if you guys, most of you have been following along on this channel, you realize that this administration is treating it like a wartime situation, which does not bode well for us in the future. So it says U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are planning to spend $100 million over a 1-year period to recruit gun rights supporters and military enthusiasts through online influencers and a geo-targeted advertising campaign. Part of what the agency called a wartime recruitment strategy, it said, was critical to hiring thousands of new deportation officers nationwide. The online influencers. We saw this coming. If you guys remember when we were talking about, this was about a year ago, during the Trump's 2024 campaign, he was talking about how his administration was putting an emphasis on gaining a hold of online influencers and podcasters, and those who do YouTube videos and post on social media and stuff like that, that their entire goal was to make sure that they could grab them and utilize them for their not only their campaign for future administration policies. And we're seeing that they were telling the truth. Again, there's been multiple times that this has happened, especially since we know their connection to Rumble, which is all tied up with the whole truth media and Trump administration and all that type of stuff. Hi, Rumble. I don't like who owns you. I don't like your platform anyways, but I got people who watch you on there. So, but yeah, so this is just another reason why that they wanted to do this, because they realize that in today's day and age, it's not the old school dinosaur media like it used to be. They got to switch it over to the new stuff where all the young people are at. And that's directly who they're targeting on this. It says the spending would help Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda dominate media networks and recruitment channels, including through ads targeting people who have attended UFC fights. We know Trump is heavily tied to the main dudes who run UFC. Listen to patriotic podcasts or shown an interest in gun and tactical gear, according to a 30-page document distributed among officials this summer detailing ICE's surge hiring marketing strategy. The Department of Homeland Security has spoken publicly about its fast-tracked effort to significantly increase ICE's workforce by hiring more than 10,000 new employees, a surge promoted on social media. The vast scale of the recruitment effort and its unconventional strategy to flood the market with millions of dollars in spending for Snapchat ads, influencers, and live streamers on Rumble. Of course, because again, the Trump administration practically owns Rumble. Guess who two of the main financial contributors to Rumble are? Again, we went over this in 2024. It's Peter Thiel and JD Vance. So imagine that. It says ICE would also use an ad industry technique known as geofencing to send ads to phone, web browsers, and social media feeds of anyone who set foot near military bases, NASCAR races, college campuses, or gun and trade shows. We've talked about geofencing before. There's been multiple campaigns that we know of that have been happening. We know that Israel they're doing their geofencing campaigns around churches and stuff. So if anybody with a cell phone crosses over that fence, they'll be targeted with pro-Israel advertisements and videos. They're doing the same thing here, where if you get anywhere near where like conservative stuff happens, gun shows and NASCAR races and military bases and all that type of stuff, once you cross over that line, they now have a targeted spot for their recruitment ads for ICE, because they know that those are the people that are more inclined to join their ranks if they target them with advertisements. It's sick and twisted, but it's the world we live in. It says the document was distributed among ICE officials in the days after the agency published a request for bids seeking contractors who could use precise audience targeting, performance media management, and results-driven creative strategies to accelerate the achievement of its recruiting goals. That same month, DHS awarded two marketing firms nearly $40 million to support the ICE Public Affairs Office recruitment campaign. So they're hitting this really hard, and they're building like a privatized military within the country. I hope people realize that, especially since the way that they're going it as wartime. This is what we've been warning about. There's something escalating here. Not only, the geopolitical stuff out there, but there's something escalating in our own country, and it's from this administration itself. Let's see here. It talks about from Sarah Saldana, director of ICE during the Obama administration. She said she worries that the speed with which ICE is racing to bring on new hires, coupled with the ads campaign framing of the jobs as part of a war, will raise the risk that the agency would attract untrained recruits eager for all-out combat. This is pretty important. Because, a lot of people look at her, well, she was ICE during the Obama thing. She's obviously a crazy leftist and, but the problem is is we see that is actually the truth of what is happening. They're targeting people. You know, they've built them up on edge for years about this thing that immigrants are coming in and they're doing what they're doing and so on and so forth. Some of it true, some of it is fake. We've gone over various aspects of that. There is some truth, there is some fakeness. Again, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. It's not, you know, the extreme spectrum of sides. But you build up this thing where people just start getting more and more angry, more and more filled with rage, and they want to take it out towards somebody. Who are they going to take it out towards? Well, wherever their leader points them to. Seriously, think about it. You guys, I'm sure, have witnessed this, have been witnessing this. You're going to notice that society, in general, people have become much more angry lately, and it's increasing. This isn't new. It's not something that's just happened in the past few months. Society has definitely gotten much more angry over the past 10 years. Think back 10 years. Go back to 2010. So that's 15 years. Go back to 2010. And, you know, the world was, you know, still chaotic to a degree, but for the most part, society just kind of went along and everybody did their thing and da-da-da-da-da. But then as years started to move forward, people just kept getting more angry and more angry. And people are just so self-absorbed, so angry at everybody around them and the situations happening, which is, it's created. They have developed society in order to do this. They've trained people, but also created events, which has caused the anger to increase. And so what you do is you get to this point right now where they're starting to hire all these people. They're pinpointing people who have this built up rage and anger, and they're looking to get it out. And so wherever their leader, their cult of personality leader is going to point them, they're going to go in that direction, then they're going to do it. And we've seen the proof of this. We've seen crazy violence coming out from DHS and ICE agents during this immigration thing, and it's only going to get worse. I can almost guarantee that. It says the agency, she said, has received more than 220,000 job applications in 5 months. And it says Congress this summer tripled ICE's enforcement and deportation budget to about $30 billion by passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's right. ICE enforcement budget, $30 billion. We went over that when they first passed the thing. It says to bolster the recruiting, the agency has removed its age limits for applicants and offered signing bonuses of up to $50,000. You don't think people are going to be jumping on that? You better believe it. It says recruitment ads have proliferated across TV, radio, print, and podcasts, directing viewers to the ICE hiring website. And of course, they're utilizing old school propaganda with Sam there. America needs you. America's been invaded by criminals and predators. We need you to get them out. This is on social media. Administration accounts have mixed immigration raid footage with memes from action movies and video games to portray, there we go, ICE's mission as a fight against the enemies at the gates. Want to deport illegals with your absolute boys, one post says. Are you going to cowboy up or just lay there and bleed, says another. Even the propaganda ad campaigns themselves are pointing towards a violent degree. It says ICE recruitment ads, the plan said, would be shown to people with an interest in military and veteran affairs, physical training, or conservative news and politics, and would target people whose lifestyles are patriotic or conservative leaning. The strategy said to target listeners of conservative radio shows, country music, and podcasts related to patriotism, men's interests in true crime, as well as any accounts that resemble users with an interest in conservative thought leaders, gun right organizations, and tactical gear brands, the document said. You know, number one target. The number one target. Turning Point USA events. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It says to further attract recruits, the strategy called for spending at least $8 million on deals with online influencers whose followers are largely Gen Z and millennials who were in the military families, fitness, and tactical lifestyle enthusiast communities. The document did not name specific influencers, but said it would focus on former agents, veterans, and pro-ICE creators who would be expected to host live streams, attend events, and post short and long-term videos or long-form videos and other content on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, X, and YouTube. Blogs, Substack, newsletters, and Threads account would also be targeted for more niche communities. They are going all out on this. And like I said, I believe that they're preparing for something in this country. I've said that from the beginning. When I've followed this, I have been hammered with comments and emails from people saying that I'm just a lunatic lefty and I'm a supporter of Biden and Harris and stuff like that because I'm calling out what's going on with this situation. And guys, again, and I want to make this very clear, it's usually somewhere in the middle when all this stuff's going on. You can not be a fan of illegal immigration and still not support what's going on with the situation at hand because you know of the truth that's happening. Both can be correct. Doesn't mean that you're one way or another when it comes to a political situation. It just means you're seeing through it, sitting up in those bleachers again, watching the game as opposed to participating in the game. So just keep that in mind. Great. Thank you, Not of This World. Now I have that song stuck in my head. It's going to be in there all night. Thank you. My word. It says ICE has run ads on Google, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook targeting the latter to military veterans and entry-level job seekers, according to the company's ad libraries, which share public data on the platform ads campaigns. Millions more in advertising was slated for delivery to gaming consoles, connected TV devices, and streaming services such as ESPN, Fox News, and Paramount Plus, as well as across newspapers, billboards, and box trucks, the strategy document said. Oh, man. It says listeners on Spotify have heard ICE ads calling on recruits to fulfill your mission, leading to hundreds of complaints on the music service's message board. One NASCAR viewer who saw the ads on live stream said in a Reddit post that they changed the channel and separately told the post that they had never felt such distaste for our government airing such ads. Take a look at some of these things. I've seen these things in all my scouring of the internet and everything like that. I've seen them all over the place. Here's your old school World War I and World War II style ads that they're putting out there for everybody. Keep in mind, these are the ads that used to be for like war recruiting. Well, they're doing this for ICE agents in the United States. I've seen these all over the place too. Yep. Is there anything else? Nope. So, yeah, this is something that, excuse me. This is something that we have been following and tracking for a long time now. We've been keeping up to date on what's going on. We know because of the rulings that have been put out, Trump had to withdraw National Guard from LA, Chicago, and Portland. He had to withdraw them from those regions, but then they have deployed in Phoenix, Arizona. They are going full ham in Phoenix, Arizona, and they're going to build detention centers out of tents in the middle of the desert in Phoenix, Arizona, where during the day it's very, very, very hot, and during the night it's very, very cold. So that should be pretty interesting to see how that's going to play out, especially since there's been a ton of criticism of how they've been handling regular detention centers. And we know that they're building the warehouse detention centers where they can hold anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 people per warehouse thing. We know that they're building like truck deportation railways, not legitimate railways. I know that confused a lot of people. They're not building actual railways with trains, but they're still called railways, even though they're trains or trucks that are going to be doing deportations to the borders. We know that they're doing bounty hunters and all those types of things as well. So they're prepping for something here in the United States. Now, of course, we know that the number one thing that everybody is thinking about is that we're hearing all over the place is it's going to be a battle against Islam, because there's the giant Islamic takeover that's currently happening in the United States and everything like that. And you guys know my position on that. I don't think it's what the narrative is, and a lot of people are pushing. I know that that's been like the number one dominated thing in the prophecy community for the past 6 months, is just talking nothing about Islam. And do we know Islam is a problem? Yeah. But I don't think it's what these people are claiming it is. I think they're prepping for something else. Maybe they'll use that as an excuse. Maybe they won't. Not sure. But that's just my perspective on it. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. That's fine. And we don't know, so why argue about it? But anyways, we'll see what happens. Either way, they're prepping for something. They're recruiting, and they're getting gung-ho, young, propaganda-filled people who are pent up with rage and anger, and they're looking to pull triggers. A lot of people ask, there's no way that they would ever shoot their own countrymen. I beg to differ. All right. So that's what we got when it comes to that. Let's head on over to Australia, because we got a little bit more information regarding the attack over there with the Jewish people. So, I'm sure a lot of you heard about this, but I just want to use this to navigate to something else. And I didn't talk about this when we did talk about the event, so I thought I'd bring it up now. It says Australia was warned about threat Israel on Bondi Beach attack on Jewish gatherings. It says both the Australian and the Israeli foreign ministers spoke on Sunday to discuss the situation. This was back in mid-December, and the measures being taken to protect Jewish communities in the country. And so there was information that was sent from Israel to Australia before the attack. This was like 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. They were warned that there was something brewing. They had information that something was going to happen. That's as much as we know regarding it. We don't necessarily know if they told them more details or not, but we do know that Australia was warned ahead of time, and you would think that an event happening on the first day of Hanukkah would have a heightened sense of awareness, but there didn't appear to be any. And we know that we talked about how there was that one dude that's all hooked up into the Israeli propaganda group, as well as the elites and so on and so forth. We talked about that dude, Arson. I think his name Arson. I think that was his name. And we talked about how we went all in depth with who he's involved with. Alan Dershowitz, he's involved with that. He's a propagandist who's got all these followers. He's named like one of the top 50 Israeli leaders and all this type of stuff. We went through his history, and he just happened to be at the event. He just moved there 2 weeks before the event, and he just happened to apparently get grazed in the head, and his first thing was hit the ground and take a selfie about it. And we went through the whole thing, and it says there's something fishy about what's going on. And then plus there was warning ahead of time that it was going to happen. And it's talking about Marmestein here. Whatchamacallit, who's the Oren Marmestein spokesperson for Israel's foreign ministry. He acknowledged that warnings had been issued to Australia about potential threats, but pointed out that calls for a global intifada were made openly on Australian soil. The large gatherings occurred despite the risks. The incident has pushed diplomats to step up and coordinate urgently. Both the Australian and Israeli foreign ministers spoke on Sunday to discuss the situation and the measures being taken to protect Jewish communities in the country. And so there was a warning that was issued ahead, clearly wasn't followed. I tend to lean in the direction, and I know this gets a lot of people in a tizzy, in a hizzy, however you want to say it. It gets a lot of people flustered because I look at it as one of those situations where it's quite possible, I'm not going to say for sure one way or another, it's quite possible that this was indeed orchestrated in order to push things forward, which would make sense coming from the political Zionist side of Israel, that we know is, in my opinion, leading the charge when it comes to bringing about anti-Semitism, because then they can use that to push things forward. Create a problem, react to it, offer the solution. It's the same thing that we see happening all over the place. Why would it be any different for them? And so I know there's a lot of people that immediately discount this. I know one of the biggest ones that I saw was in the prophecy community was John Haller, who was talking about, well, anybody who says that the Jews knew ahead of time, so they're not intelligent, they're not smart, they're da-da-da-da-da, but we know that, well, maybe you don't know, but I know for a fact that when it comes to the Middle East stuff, John Haller has an agenda that he's trying to push in regards to this stuff, and it clouds his judgment. And I remember when I brought up the thing when the October 7th thing happened, I brought up the fact that there's a lot of information that says Israel knew that was happening, funded it, and let it happen so they could push things forward. And I remember being called a Looney Tune by Brandon Holthouse. And sure enough, look at what's going on now. Brandon Holthouse had to change his tune because the information was correct. Amazing how that works. But we have this that just came out, and it came out yesterday from Sydney Criminal Lawyers, which is an actual lawyer group, but they wrote this out there as a warning. It says government's likely to use Bondi massacre to justify AI-powered mass surveillance. Imagine that. It says the immediate aftermath of the Bondi massacre, questions turned to how intelligence and policing systems had not detected an ISIS-inspired father and son plotting a mass murder at high-profile Jewish festival with an arsenal of legal firearms. The response was unsurprisingly been the launch of inquiries both nationally and at the state level, with the solution likely to be mass surveillance. Problem, reaction, solution. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has appointed former prominent public servant Dennis Richardson to undertake a review of federal intelligence and policing systems in light of the terror-related mass murder. Concerns about gaps in intelligence after the mass killing on Gaggenau land has mirrored the panic around weaknesses found in the U.S. security system in the wake of the 2001 9/11 terrorist attack in New York City. This is very telling. If they're comparing this to 9/11, which 9/11, I know earth-shocking news, Shatter the Glass, was completely orchestrated. We've gone over that, not necessarily in depth because I don't really see a need to, but we've talked about how it was orchestrated by the U.S., by Saudi Arabia, and by Israel in order to push things forward, both in the United States and in the Middle East. And so, shockingly enough, all of the Patriot Act and everything that followed that, all the surveillance stuff, was planned ahead of time, because we know that all that stuff tried to get through years before 9/11, but they couldn't get it through, so they had to do something in order to make it go through, and so that's what we got. Now they're saying the same thing about this. Well, we need better surveillance, AI-powered surveillance, so this doesn't happen again. Again, just if you're willing to see it, it's there. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to squint your eyes or anything. It's right there. You just got to be able to see it. It's pretty clear. It says in U.S. entrepreneur Peter Thiel and other investors went on to found data integration company Palantir in 2003 in order to bridge these Intel blind spots with artificial intelligence. And we know Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and there's two other dudes. I can never remember their names. We know that they created Palantir through the financing of In-Q-Tel, which is a CIA funding group. So, problem, reaction, solution, right? So, an obvious step is that Thiel or Palantir CEO Alex Karp contact our ministers to discuss security platforms already operating in the United States, which could be applied here. And in considering Palantir's links to the MAGA White House, this becomes much more likely as the Trump administration has just announced it is actively surveilling Australia's migrant population to prevent any security concerns. Released in 2008, Gotham is the platform used to surveil the U.S. domestically. It takes data and breaks it down into discernible and readable profiles and entities. The AI surveilling capabilities involved cannot discern connections and patterns indiscernible to human observation, but it can in turn be used to make predictive assessments about future crime and law enforcement responses. If you guys don't know, Palantir's Project Gotham is basically widely used. Not every precinct uses it, but it's widely used across the United States in all law enforcement, sheriff, highway patrol, local police, so on and so forth. They use that in their computing systems. So what they do is the moment that they get your driver's license, when they go back and they're running your data, what they're doing is they're not only running it through their what's the word? Database. There we go. They're not running it through their local database, but they're also running it through Project Gotham, which is collecting all of your other data and giving the cop an assessment of if you might be dangerous, if you might be flagged, if you might be on a list, you might be doing something like that. The AI gathers all that data and makes a report as well. So cops are using that program. It's all over the place. So yeah, that's always fun, right? But yeah. Anyways, it says the correlation between 9/11 and the circumstances surrounding the Bondi massacre are clear. There is information available to law enforcement and the intelligence agencies that could have served as red flags if the agency had brought together the disparate pieces of intel, with the atrocity potentially being prevented. The details about the Bondi killers, Sajid and Naveed Akram, excuse me, that have emerged following the 14th December mass killing of 15 further support a shift towards AI utilizing security platforms now operating in the United States. Sajid was able to obtain a 2023 issued gun license and permits for 6 guns, despite ASIO having investigated its son over potential connections to local ISIS cell in 2019. And this is where things start to break apart in the narrative and start lending more validation towards planned event. Because when you have 2 people, one of which is being flagged, possibly relatively close in time, being connected to ISIS, and yet you're able to hand them in Australia, which is just ridiculously hard to even get a gun permit anyways, but you're going to hand them a gun permit and a license for 6 guns on top of it. Things start breaking apart pretty quick on the narrative. But again, that's my perspective. You can go down the direction that you want to on that. It says, aside from Gotham, the other main security platform Palantir operates is in the U.S. is Foundry, which provides security systems for corporations. As part of the U.S. President Donald Trump's mass deportation of undocumented migrants drive, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has also teamed up with Palantir Technologies to roll out the Immigration OS platform to streamline this process. How long until Australia gets that program? It says the shift towards Australian government using Palantir began in 2011. So yeah, Australia was using Palantir since 2011. Again, Palantir is everywhere. It's worldwide. I hope people realize that. Since the Australian Defence Department uses Palantir's Foundry and Vantage platforms, the Home Affairs Department's Financial Transaction Monitor, AUSTRAC, has utilized Foundry in Gotham since 2017, while the Australian Signals Directorate began using Palantir systems in 2013 and renewed its contract in 2019. Says the security outcomes at Bondi were not solely a concern for federal labor. Indeed, the opposition has made it well known that it considers the Prime Minister is responsible. That the Prime Minister is responsible the incident for a weak security environment in terms of unchecked rising anti-Semitism, while Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu told the Globe in the wake of the killings that he'd warned Albanese of a threat 4 weeks earlier. And this is where things start. If you've looked into this and you're seeing history and trends and stuff like that, that you know in history, there's been multiple times that Israel warns somebody of something and then something just happens to occur not too far afterwards. And we're kind of getting an indicator here. Again, we don't know for sure, but we've got a lot of stuff that's stacking in that direction that makes us question if this was indeed something that they're planning for in Australia to move forward. Could it be AI surveillance? Could it be something more in regard to that? We don't necessarily know, but it's definitely possible. Don't write it off as a wacky-tacky type of thing because you have a biased view on things. We know that these governments, Australia and Israel, are corrupt to their core. And so we got to be careful that we don't get pulled in an extreme and just look at the facts of what's going on, which requires looking at history and trends and all that type of stuff. And so that moves us over into this. This just happened. What was this? This was Friday. Was this Friday? This was Friday, I think. Thursday or Friday, one of those. And it says, Israeli tech billionaire Shlomo Kramer urges Americans to limit the First Amendment. Sparks outrage. Says, I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it. So the best way to protect something is to take it away. Okay. That's what Shlomo Kramer said during his interview on, this was Money Movers, CNBC, I think. This is Shlomo Kramer, the co-founder and CEO of cybersecurity firm Cato Networks, sparked outrage online after he urged Americans to limit the First Amendment, arguing that democratic nations must respond to emerging dangers by controlling online speech before it's too late. Guess what? Guess who else has said that they're taking away the First Amendment and they continue to take bits and pieces of it to limit the First Amendment? That's right. It's Trump. Trump said that publicly. He said that we're taking away free speech and we're taking away these things. And we've gotten calls from the Trump administration that they're going to continue to remove pieces of the First Amendment. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Just full on attack. It says Kramer, a serial entrepreneur who helped found Checkpoint Software and Imperva, told CNBC that artificial intelligence has given authoritarian governments an unfair advantage over democracies that protect free expression. I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time we limit the First Amendment in order to protect it, Kramer said during an interview. Nothing like a foreign person coming in and telling us to get rid of our rights, God-given rights. Interesting. According to Kramer, governments and technology companies should take direct control of online platforms and determine who is allowed to speak and how much influence their speech should carry. We need to control the platforms, all the social platforms, Kramer said. This is full on taking control of every digital space for people to communicate. They want to control it. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the censorship that's been going on for forever. We've talked about, how they're trying to manipulate algorithms, manipulate speech. They're blocking people from being able to do things. They're banning people. We know, from Obama to Trump to Biden to Trump again, we know that they're working with the technology companies to control the narratives that are being put online. We understand that this is what's going on, and he's pushing the same thing. He says, well, now we need to take it to the next step. We need to limit it even further. And they're utilizing AI, the very same thing that they're investing in order to say that that's the problem. So we need to start limiting your speech because of the very same thing that we're creating. It says he proposed a system that would stack and rank the authenticity of every person that expresses themselves online with speech privileges determined by that ranking. Social credit system. That's what that is. But AI will determine it. So if you say certain things online that they approve of, then your ranking will go up and you're allowed to say more things. But if you're saying things that they don't like, your ranking goes down, and you're not going to be able to say things. It's a social credit system. It says based on the system, Kramer said authorities should take control over what they are saying. Oh wow! Kramer contrasted the U.S. with China. Remember, China's the testing ground. They're the ones that have been developing all this stuff, and it's rolling out into other countries. It says, which he said maintains a single narrative that protects its inner stability, while democratic countries allow multiple narratives that can be exploited by adversaries. Kramer's remarks ignited an immediate backlash on X, where users accused him of promoting censorship and meddling in the U.S. constitutional rights. Another post labeled Kramer as an Israeli billionaire pushing for Americans to surrender their First Amendment rights, while critics framed his proposals as indistinguishable from China's system of state-controlled speech. So it sounds like to me. That's exactly what it sounds like to me. Just keep in mind, who are the people that really control what's happening in the Trump administration? Tech giants We know the table, the shadow, elites, and that includes the people who run the Israeli government, the Edomites, the fake Jews, the synagogue of Satan. And so we've got quite a collection that's happening of our future. This is a prediction of what's going to happen in the future. On top of that, this was something that just came across as well, which is pretty fascinating. This is Jordana Cutler, who's the public policy director and Israeli, the public policy director, Israel and the Jewish diaspora at Meta, the Facebook company Meta. And she was speaking at the Jewish News Syndicate. I want you guys to hear what she's saying. Keep in mind, it's very similar to what we've been hearing, not only from Shlomo here, Kramer, but also the Trump administration as well. So check this out.
In addition to my work leading the Israel public policy team, I created a new role specifically focused on the Jewish diaspora. It is a privilege to represent Meta to Jewish communities worldwide. I am proud that Meta's commitment to addressing anti-Semitism on our platforms has remained steadfast, especially after October 7th. Our policies are industry-leading in protecting Jewish people and Israelis on our platforms. Our community standards include policies that prevent harassment, violence, and incitement, and include a robust framework to combat anti-Semitism. Our hateful conduct policy includes specific protections for Israelis and Jews. We banned Holocaust denial and distortion back in 2020. We changed industry thinking on this issue, designating denial as hate speech rather than misinformation.
Okay, I want you guys to hear that real quick. Her group led the global initiative for online groups, social media companies, to change the definition of Holocaust denial from misinformation, which we know if you're a Holocaust denial person, you're just stupid. It's as simple as that. You're just moronic, and we know there's a lot of them out there. But they changed it from misinformation, which is what it is, it's just bad information, to hate speech, which allows them to ban people on social media from speaking that certain thing. Again, these people have the right to moronic ideas such as Holocaust stuff. So what they're doing is they're taking hate speech, which is not even a thing, and they utilize that in order to take people's speech away when it comes to that. See, this is the important thing that I hope you guys remember. Everybody's heard the story of first they came for this person, I didn't say anything, so they took them away. Then they came for the other person, and I didn't say anything, and so they took them away. And then they came for this person, I didn't say anything, then they took them away. And then they came for me, and there's nobody to speak for me, type of thing. This is the slippery slope syndrome of what's going on. As stupid as Holocaust denial is, and moronic, and just against factual information and evidence and everything like that, it's not something that somebody should get banned over unless it's going in a direction of calling for, more violence or something like that anyways. But that was what her group did, is she started to manipulate and change it from misinformation to bannable hate speech, which is only going to evolve into something else.
It wasn't just about facts, it was about protecting people from harmful conduct. We banned content with harmful stereotypes about Jews, such as the claim that Jews run the world or other major institutions. We updated our policies to recognize that the term Zionist can be used as a proxy for Jews and Israelis. We banned content claiming Zionists run the world or control the media.
Did you guys hear what she just said? We banned people who claimed that the Jews run the social media. We banned people who say that we ban people on social media. She confirmed the very same thing that they're claiming is not true. That's kind of the perspective that I wanted to let you guys know on that. And she's the one that's influencing much of the social media that's currently happening on the Facebook side of things. And this is kind of, we've kind of been dealing with this topic on and off for the past few months, because it's a reality that I think we in the church and the prophecy community and whatnot, we need to be able to recognize for us to be able to see things move forward in this world, going further, especially since things are becoming much more deceptive than they were before. They were deceiving before. I'm not saying that they weren't, but things are becoming much more deceptive now, especially since the divide is getting wider and wider and wider. You're either on that side or you're either on that side. There's no in between. There's no middle ground when it comes to this. And what I'm talking about, and a lot of you will recognize this right off the bat, what I'm talking about is we're talking about the increase of anti-Semitism that is happening in the world. Nobody can deny, again, unless you're somebody who's denying reality, but nobody can deny that anti-Semitism is skyrocketing across the world. And we can verify that utilizing scripture, because scripture tells us that in these times, it will increase during these times. So again, nobody can deny that that's happening. Where the deception starts to creep in is why it's happening. And there's various reasons. There's not one reason. There's not two reasons. There's various reasons of why that's happening. We understand that there's a major satanic propaganda campaign that's making its way through various forms of churches and religious organizations, that's doing the things of the churches replacing Israel and the replacement theology and stuff like that. We see that that's happening. That's an increasing theory that's making its way through churches right now and on podcasts and all that type of stuff. So we've got that aspect of it. We've also got the aspect of the more outspoken nature of what's happening with religious groups like Islam and things like that they're becoming much more outspoken in terms of this. And so it's increasing in that way too. You're starting to see more and more physical evidence of that increase. So we've got those various aspects that are happening. The third one is talked about, and I think too far in some extents, on the secular side of things. It's talked about in the secular side, but it's completely dismissed and disregarded for anybody in specifically the prophecy community, because they have been programmed by pastors and teachers that if you believe this way, then you are anti-Semitic. And in some cases, some of them claim that you're not even saved at all, which is completely not true. That's an alteration of the gospel, and that's heretical. But it's the increase of the evidence and physical actions being taken by the state of Israel, the political side of Israel, that has increased the anti-Semitism through their own actions and their own speech. We have gone over a bunch of those things already. And through those actions and speech, they're saying it's anti-Semitism to speak out against them. And then by them saying that and doing the things that they're doing, it's only increasing anti-Semitism because people are seeing what's going on and it's not correct. And so those are just three. There's other things as well, but we're not going to get into those. We don't have time. But those are three elements that are increasing the anti-Semitism around the world. And for us, who we can rightly divide the word of God, and we understand the difference between supporting God's land and God's people and supporting, the state of Israel, the political Zionism and the synagogue of Satan and all those types of things, we can rightly divide that and see what's going on. We should be able to recognize all of these aspects that are coming from all sides and all beliefs. And we should be able to see what's happening and go, okay, this is making a lot more sense. It's matching with what scripture is telling us is happening. And so It allows us to have a better view of what's happening and allows us to not have a biased look at things, especially in a time of deception, and we can see through what's happening not only in our own backyard, but what's happening globally. And it allows us to be more aware of everything that's happening. So that's my perspective on this. I think that's a very important way to view these things and to be able to navigate through the deception that's currently happening right now. So, okay. And one last one before we get into the Venezuela stuff. I know a lot of people are waiting for me to get into Venezuela. Like I said, we'll get to it. Just wanted to go over a few things. And this just happened a few hours ago. Worth keeping tabs on it because this appears to have extended into something possibly much bigger. I'll talk about that in just a second. It says the RAF, or the Royal Air Force, jets carry out joint strikes on ISIS-occupied base storing weapons in Syria. It says the RAF Typhoons tonight bombed ISIS targets in Syria in a joint operation with France, the Ministry of Defense said. Interesting timing, especially because it's following what just happened with Venezuela, which allowed them to go and do this, and nobody's really talking about it. It didn't really hit any news. But yeah, it's fascinating. Even with the new regime over there in Syria, led by a terrorist, again, a Trump-appointed terrorist. Jeez, man. It's just been straight up bombings in Syria like it's always been. Israel's bombed parts of Syria. The United States has bombed parts of Syria. The UK and France have bombed parts of Syria. Nothing seems to have changed over there, even with the new guy in charge. Amazing how that works. It says the RAF Typhoons bombed ISIS targets in Syria in a joint operation with France. It says British forces targeted an underground facility where Daesh, or Islamic State, has suspected to have been storing weapons as part of a global effort to prevent the terror group from resurfacing. And so, yeah, they just did this tonight, actually. And yeah, kind of under the cover of the Venezuela situation. The other thing that I just saw, we don't have much information in regards to it. This was just a few minutes before starting the show. Is there's like a ton of major UK and US military planes, cargo planes that just landed over there in the United Kingdom. Following Venezuela and following this strike, there's been a ton of movement over there involving UK and US military cargo planes. And so keep an eye on what's going on in the Middle East. Again, like I was saying before, 2026, I believe, is going to be the time of major power shifts, geopolitical power shifts. There's going to be a lot of change happening on a worldwide scale. That's my view. That's what I'm looking for. That's the stuff that I've seen being built up towards this. And I think we're going to start seeing that. So we might start seeing a lot more crazy stuff happening all around the world, especially since we're only 3 days in and we just saw what happened in Venezuela. So keep an eye on what's going to be happening over there, because that could be from UK, that could be a launching point for something over there in the Middle East. So we'll see what happens. Okay. Proton Girl in quotes might. Well, we just don't know. That's the thing. You know, a lot of people speak in definites, with authoritative definite. And we just don't know. I don't like speaking in that way because, you know, I could say 2026, this is what's going to happen. And then it doesn't happen. And it's like, well, I didn't know. I just said something with authority that I had no way of backing up. I don't like doing that. I prefer to just go with what we know and then view things in a trend-like matter. I think viewing things in trend is a lot more reliable than in definites with things. A lot of the stuff that I watch for, and I've said on this show that I said, well, it's looking like it's going to happen, and then they end up happening, is because I'm just viewing a trend from the evidence and information that I'm gathering. And so I'm seeing that trended evidence towards the geopolitical power shifts. And we know scripturally for things to move forward, we're going to get stuck if we stay in status quo when it comes to the power around the world. Things have to change power structure wise if we're going to continue to move forward. We can sit here and talk about all the technology and all that type of stuff that's happening, which is important because it's going to play a part in some way, shape, or form, how things go forward. But if we're going to start entering in the territory where we're starting to see the shadow of actual Bible prophecy happening, because we know there's no Bible prophecy that's currently happening right now. There's just not. We're watching steps towards that. But if we want to start seeing that shadow of Bible prophecy start to get a little bit bigger, the world is going to have to change. And 2026, based on the evidence that we've gathered, is trending in that direction, that this is going to be a year where there's going to be a lot of change. So I think that's very consistent with what we've been seeing. So let's go ahead and move on into the Venezuela situation. So first up, I want to start with this, because I think we need to start with this. For those who continue to say that Trump is the president of peace and continue to back this guy because they are as biased and blind as they possibly can be, I want to start with this, where Trump has claimed he is the president of peace. So why is he bombing so many overseas hotspots? It says the U.S. has carried out well over 500 bombings across the globe this year, conflict monitors say. It says U.S. President Donald Trump earned plaudits from war-weary Americans when he promised during his first campaign to stop dragging the country into conflicts overseas, as he framed as a waste of money and personnel. But his latest foray into hotspots on other continents, including launching strikes in Africa on Christmas Day, has some supporters questioning whether he really meant it when he said he's not going to start wars. Again, he said that he is the president of peace just this December. And then immediately look at what's going on. It says Trump has since started calling himself the peace president, boasting about how his role in helping end, by his count, 8 wars so far this year. Despite that rhetoric and posturing, Trump has shown that he's not afraid to wade into conflicts with military forces in places where some Americans couldn't find it on a map. The observers note that his multi-country bombing campaign is not exactly peaceful. If anything, his administration is very pro-conflict, said Cleonada, I have no idea, really. The president and CEO of Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, Escalate, an independent and impartial conflict monitor, says the peace talks is just a PR campaign, which I believe to be the truth as well. He continues to put that out there, even though he's not. Worth noting that he has tied Obama with the most strikes against other countries by any U.S. president. And these are separate countries. Obama held the record at 7. Trump currently sits at 7 now, and we still got 3 years left of his thing, or whatever. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens. So yeah, he's tied with that. We know Obama's known as the drone king. We covered this in 2024 that Trump is known as the bomb king. He's bombed more people than any U.S. president in history, but he tied Obama with the most countries that he's bombed as well. So pretty interesting on that. We also have this that just came out from the Military Times. This is a year of strikes. U.S. military operations surge under Trump, president of peace. It says President Donald Trump has presided over a rapid surge of U.S. military activity abroad since returning to the Oval Office. In his first year of his second term, he has authorized a series of strikes ranging from unprecedented use of bunker buster bombs against Iran's most fortified nuclear sites to a sustained counter-narcotics campaign off the Venezuelan coast, which we know that is a complete lie, especially after what we just witnessed. It says Trump, who has labeled himself as a peace president, frames the expansion of force as a strategy of peace through strength, which is straight from the Monroe Doctrine, which he's now calling the Donroe doctrine. Yes, I kid you not. We'll get to that. Says Trump added that his proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. I'll just leave that one there. Since taking office on January 20th, 2025, Trump has overseen at least 626 airstrikes, according to data compiled by the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project that was shared with Military Times. By comparison, his predecessor, Biden, launched a total of 555 strikes in his entire 4-year term. So 626 in his first year, compared to Biden with 555 in his 4 years. Interesting. Again, it's Somalia, February 1st and ongoing. These are the ones that we know of. So Somalia, which we covered that a few weeks ago, over just a ridiculous amount, hundreds of bombs dropped in Somalia over there. But yeah, Somalia, Iraq started March 13th, bombed Iraq, bombed Yemen, March 15th to May 6th. Bombed Iran, June 22nd. Bombed the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean, September 2nd ongoing. Bombed Syria, December 19th. Bombed Nigeria, December 25th. And then there's Venezuela situation as well. So that's what's been going on from the President of Peace, which leads us into what's going on with the Venezuela situation. This is what's in the future for Venezuela. Trump says United States will run the country. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will be among the officials working with Venezuelans to administer the country, Trump said. But I thought it was about drugs. That's what I kept getting told by the Trump administration and the MAGA groups and the prophecy teachers and pastors. That Trump's just trying to take care of the drug problem. Right. And I'm the Queen of England back from the dead. So, for those who have been around my channel, first of all, from the beginning, we were talking about, day one that this stuff started happening, we were talking about how this was not about drugs. We knew it wasn't about drugs. We just knew it wasn't. All those boat strikes and stuff like that, which they still have not provided an ounce of evidence that there was narcotics and drugs on the boat on its way to the United States, had nothing to do with drugs. Had to do with prepping for the takeover of Venezuela, which we know was a part of Trump administration's and the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. We went over that. We knew it was happening, especially if you go back to Trump's first administration where they were wargaming the very scenario that we are seeing today, which was removing Maduro and taking control of Venezuela and their oil situation over there. So again, we knew from the beginning here on this channel that it had nothing to do with drugs. We also have been following and tracking this thing since the beginning. For months, we've been tracking this thing because we knew that there was something to it. It wasn't like all the other things that we've seen where it's just they're building and building and building and building. And, all these people for the past several years continue to say, well, it's about to go hot. It's about to go hot. It's about to go hot. And it still hasn't gotten freaking hot over there. But we knew that there was something to this, that it was going to happen. And so we tracked it, and sure enough, it happened. So again, this is why we watch things, so we're not caught off guard. If you've been around the channel, when you saw the news about Venezuela, be honest. Were you surprised that it happened? Really? Were you shocked that the United States actually did something against Venezuela? You shouldn't have been, because we were just waiting for it. We weren't caught off guard. Why? Because we were watching for it, as we're called to watch for these things. So it's key that we do that. This is President Donald Trump said the U.S. officials would administer Venezuela after the removal of its president and restore its oil infrastructure to repay U.S. companies whose property was confiscated decades ago and resume large-scale selling abroad. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. It basically means probably never. So with this move, I hope people realize that the United States have become the number one producer of oil in the world, and it's not even close. I hope you guys know that. The United States is now number one in oil producing. Saudi Arabia, Iran, all of them. The United States is now number one. Says his comments came as a news conference following the capture of Nicolas Maduro, the country's former president, and his wife during a U.S. military raid. Says Trump says Venezuela doesn't have a choice about the U.S. administration. It must be nice to just be a country, to go into another country, kidnapped based on international law and legalities. The United States illegally kidnapped Maduro. I hope people realize that. Must be nice to just go into another country, kidnap the opposition, and go, we're in control of your country now. Deal with it. Because that's what they did. I hope people realize that. Says Trump said that the leaders who would administer the country are still being designated, but he said they wouldn't include those surrounding him at a news conference, such as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and General Dan Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Worth noting that from what I have seen, the reports I've seen and pictures and video and stuff like that, the people of Venezuela are neither celebrating nor mourning what just happened. They have gone into survival mode and have been stocking up on food and water the best that they possibly can because they realize that their life, as bad as it was before, is about to get a whole lot worse because now they're living in a country of limbo, like most of the other countries over in that region where there's just straight limbo. So their life wasn't great before. It's only going to get worse from here on out. They recognize that, which is why they're not celebrating nor mourning. They're just trying to survive. Says Trump didn't rule out having the military contribute to running the country. Says we're not afraid of boots on the ground, Trump said. Says Venezuela Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, we'll get to her, and Maduro remains the country's only president, despite Trump saying that she had been sworn in to replace him. Trump said Rodriguez was gracious in speaking with Rubio. She really doesn't have a choice, Trump said. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro and leave and let it go. Says Trump said administering Venezuela could take a period of time. Well, how long? Well, asked about how long the administration could last, Trump said it could take time. He acknowledged it could take years. They ain't giving it up because this is in line with the Monroe Doctrine. This is about controlling their quote-unquote backyard or hemisphere. And this is the beginning of it. Remember when we were talking about the Monroe Doctrine, the consolidation of military general and leadership, and then we talked about the alleged plan for the Core Five? Starts here. Especially since they have made it known that this is about the Monroe Doctrine in their press conferences. He says, I like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time, Trump said. It's not going to cost us anything, he added later, because of the anticipated oil revenues. Trump said oil companies would spend billions to rebuild Venezuela's oil industry and be reimbursed from the sale of oil, which he said had dropped off to a fraction of the potential. We're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be, Trump said. But it's about the drugs. Drugs. That's what we're being told, right? Asked about Chinese, Russian, and Iranian interest in the oil, Trump said Venezuela would sell to other countries as its industry is rebuilt. We will be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now. But it's about the drugs. Yeah. So we're going to go through this. I got a bunch of stuff. This was kind of a pain, to be honest, whenever these things happen, because there's no, how I usually go from article to article and stuff like that. I can't do that on this one. So I had to just collect everything that I could. And then I just made stuff and we'll go through it. So hang with me. So this was put out by Bondi here. I just want to show you how ridiculous and illegal this is. It says Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Cecilia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy. So that's what we've been told that's been going on. Cocaine importation conspiracy. Well, the problem, and we covered this when it first happened with that, is just December 2nd, Honduran ex-president pardoned by Trump for drug trafficking is released from U.S. prison. The former Honduran president, who was pardoned by Trump at the beginning of December, was convicted of helping to smuggle 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, and he was pardoned by Trump and left prison for it. That's Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was released for bringing in 400 tons of cocaine. But yet, Maduro is being charged for cocaine importation conspiracy. So one gets illegally kidnapped and brought to the United States, while the other, who did the exact same thing, is released from prison because he was pardoned by Trump. It just goes to show that it's hypocrisy and there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. He's also getting charged with possession of machine guns and destructive devices and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. He's being charged, first of all, I think this is the 1934, 1934 Gun Act with the United States, which only has jurisdiction on U.S. soil. This is where the illegality comes from, because for that to actually stick and be convicted of it, the person has to be on U.S. soil. So what they had to do was go illegally kidnap somebody from his own country to place him on U.S. soil so they can charge him with something that only happens in this jurisdiction. It's completely illegal. That's where it comes from. I'm not defending Maduro. The dude is fill in the blank. But I'm also somebody who says we need to make sure that we're doing it the right way. Because if we're all doing illegal things, there's no justice. You're just doing illegal things against somebody else for your own thing. That's my stance on it. So again, for all the people who are going to sit there and go, well, you're just defending Maduro. You're a lefty. That has nothing to do with that. But that's what it goes to show how ridiculous this whole thing is. How obviously that there's something more to it. It's not what we're being told it's about. What it's about is not what we're being told it's about, and that's important. So again, we got that going on. Let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth regarding about why they decided to take over Venezuela, shall we?
As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not.
So it's about oil. It's about control. It's about fascist corporatism. There's a little bit more, which I don't want to jump too far ahead. We'll get to that in a minute, because there's more to it that I want to discuss. But that's a lot of it. That's a lot of it. But again, I think that there's much more bigger geopolitical power involved with this, but it does require the whole oil thing and corporatism on top of it. It was never about drugs. So I'm just going to be, it might be a little brutal to hear this, but I just want to say, I have to say it this way because it needs to be said. for all of the morons that decided to project the narrative in order to defend their political party and their cult of personality present, whether it's secular or pastors within the church, you look pretty freaking stupid right now. And I hope you recognize it. And I hope you apologize for it. Sometimes you need a little tough love. But yet we continue to have people that just want to just go ahead and continue to push the narrative along. And it's ridiculous. It's absurd. At this point, how many times do you want to be wrong before you finally decide to abandon ship of the narrative and talk about the truth of the matter rather than deceive your followers? It just needs to be said. How many times do you want to be wrong? Because that tally is getting pretty high. All because you want to defend your political cult of personality Cheeto. Then this came out immediately following the events. It says finance industry eyes investment opportunities in Venezuela. They're already prepped and ready. They have airplane tickets, hotel rooms paid for, and they're already. Why? Because they knew ahead of time what was coming. So some on Wall Street are already considering possible investment opportunities in Venezuela following the capture of Nicolas Maduro, according to Charles Myers, chairman of consulting firm Signum Global Advisors and a former head of investment advisory firm Evercore. Myers said in an interview he is planning a trip to Venezuela with officials from top hedge funds and asset managers to determine whether there are investment prospects in the country under the new leadership. Which leadership? We don't even know yet. Says the trip will feature about 20 officials from finance, energy, and defense sectors, among others. Myers said the tentative plan is for the group to travel to Venezuela in March. They've already got it set up. It's planned. This is hours after the thing even occurred, and they're set up. And they're going to go in March and meet with new government, including the new president, finance minister, energy minister, economy minister, and head of the central bank and the Caracas Stock Exchange. They knew ahead of time. They were prepped. Because it wasn't about drugs. And this is a fascist regime. Anybody shocked by this? You shouldn't be, especially if you've been around my channel, because we were calling this. We've been calling this. We were not caught off guard because we were watching. So, again, like I said, some of this stuff, I just had to just gather information and then put a summary on all this stuff. So, we'll just go through this. So tracking the situation. So what we know is U.S. this is not, I'm not putting speculation, I'm not putting opinion stuff or anything in this. These are just the facts of what actually we have confirmed to happen. So we're not doing the other stuff. This is just the facts. U.S. Special Force, this was a U.S. Special Forces operation. U.S. Army Delta Force with support from the Air Force and the Navy to accomplish the goal. This was a delayed operation. This operation was supposed to happen December 25th, but they pushed it off in order to do the Nigerian strikes over there on December 25th. Then they planned on doing it just a couple days after December 25th, but the weather didn't permit for it, so they pushed it January 3rd, and so it just happened. It says Venezuela military was given stand-down order, and their defenses never turned on, and that's where the the thick of it starts happening. That's where the questions start arising, because the military never fired a shot and their defenses never turned online. They were shut down, both military, small arms, and anti-air, which says this was something from the inside. Maduro and wife were removed from the picture. I worded it that way because we're told that they're captured and standing trial. Who knows if they're even alive at this point? So I just worded it that way. It says this is part of the Project 2025 agenda. We covered that. I showed the document that this was indeed a part of that Project 2025 agenda. And so, yeah, we knew it was coming. We knew it was coming. Says Trump has stated that the U.S. will remain in control of the country, quote unquote, for now. We read about that. Said could take years. Says Trump has stated that top priority is moving U.S. oil companies in to take over production. Again, confirmed. We went over that. This was never about drugs. You probably are sick of me saying that by this time, but I'm going to keep saying it. This was never, ever, not once, not ever about drugs, even though that's what you were being told. Says Trump appears to have turned his back. This is where things also get pretty interesting. Trump appears to have turned his back on Maria Corina Machado. That's the one lady, the Nobel Prize lady, who dedicated her Nobel Peace Prize in the name of Donald Trump. And we went over the fact that she's got a long history with the CIA. She's helped with other coups that happened in Venezuela. She helped to get rid of the Constitution in Venezuela. And she was the one that was going around a few months later that said Donald Trump is going to help us revitalize Venezuela. And when she gets in control, she's going to start selling her the resources to the United States companies. Now, all of a sudden, he appears. I'm just putting appears because this is what he's saying publicly. But again, things can change. But Trump appears to turn his back on this lady. She said she's a nice lady, but she's not respected in her country and can't lead. This is pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting situation because this was the lady that was... It wasn't really public. It honestly wasn't. This was one of those things where you had to go looking for it, and you could kind of see it going in that direction, that she was going to be the one to take over. Now, all of a sudden, not. So this is pretty interesting. So what we do know is Venezuela Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as president. There's rumors, and this one is a rumor. It's not confirmed, but there's a lot of evidence that says otherwise. But I just put rumors because, again, we don't know for sure. Rumors that Rodriguez was the one who made a backdoor deal with the United States. She'll give him Maduro if she becomes president, and then the United States gets to operate with the oil in the country. This leads to something bigger, which we'll get to a little bit later. Don't want to jump ahead. Rodriguez is also tied to Cartel de las Soles. So she's one of them. You know, the very same people that Trump says that they're going against. Her family is also involved with a whole bunch of high-profile kidnappings, political kidnappings. Her dad was a professional kidnapper. And it was her and her brother that were the architects of the Maduro election fraud. And her brother, Jorge Rodriguez, is the head of the assembly. Mike Huckabee came out and said the U.S. takeover of Venezuela is good for Israel. Do with that however you please. Just pretty interesting that would happen there. And worth noting, Venezuela is one of the very few countries that does not have a Rothschild central bank. It's a completely 100% state-owned central bank. And following the situation, the strikes in Venezuela, Nat Rothschild came out and said, "Well done, Donald J. Trump." This is going to be their opportunity to go in and install the Rothschild central bank in Venezuela. Interesting. Interesting how that works. We got a lot of pieces. A lot of people are getting payoffs on this thing. The only people losing are the people of Venezuela. But everybody else is winning. It's amazing how that works. Now, worth noting, this is where things kind of get murky. They get a little cloudy. I don't have an answer for you right now. It's something that we'll just have to wait and see. Back in, this was December, early December. I don't have the exact date. I apologize. Early December, during a public council meeting, speech thing, whatever you want to call it, Delcy Rodriguez was making a statement regarding the boat strikes from the United States. Now, this video is coming out and stating that it was today that it happened in response to everything. It wasn't today. I checked it. This was during the boat strike situation, where she said publicly that the United States strikes against Venezuela were part, and I kid you not, part of a Zionist enslavement campaign for her nation, and that they will refuse any instruction by the Trump administration. Now, all of a sudden, she's working in tandem with the Trump administration. Interesting. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's public theater and what's really going on. And this is a case of, I don't know. It's interesting. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens in regards to this. Let's keep moving. This is the stuff that I think is worth really keeping track of, especially since sorry, just side-eyeing a comment over there in the chat. We'll just leave it there. But this is the stuff that's worth paying attention, because I think this is where things are going to start moving forward for 2026. Because a lot of people are saying, okay, Venezuela, their oil situation, we know 3 main players who are involved with it: Russia, China, and Iran. We know that those are the 3 main players that are involved with it. We're not really going to pay attention to Iran because we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that. But let's see what's going on with China and Russia. What about China with this whole situation? So what happened with them? Well, we know the Chinese envoy and officials arrived in Caracas just hours before the attack. So the Chinese envoy showed up, I think it was like 4 hours before the attack, and then the officials came like an hour after the envoy. The envoy always goes first to kind of get things prepped for when the officials show up. And so the envoy and the officials, Chinese officials, showed up in Caracas just hours before the attack. And reports say that they were on the ground in Caracas during the United States strikes. Now, this is where we really got to make sure that we're just pinpointing truth in this, and we're not getting caught up and swept up in opinions and narrative and stuff like that. Because the majority of narrative that you're going to see, that I've been seeing from most people, is this was a warning shot to China. China's going to be angry. This is going to deteriorate any working relationship that has begun to happen between Xi and Trump and stuff like that. And I'm not buying it. My personal view, that's all I can say, my perspective, I'm not buying it. I do not think this will affect anything between the United States and China. I think China knew what was going to happen. I do. I believe that. I don't have anything that I can prove it to you. That's just my perspective on the trends of information that I have seen. But the narrative that's getting pushed out there is this is going to wreck the relationship that has been semi-built up between China and the United States, and China's going to retaliate. Don't see it. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong. But just my perspective. Continuing on with what about China? So what do we know? We got China deals with Venezuela oil. That was one of the things that the officials were going to speak with China about, or with Venezuela about when they were there. So that's what they were talking about. So we know that China deals with Venezuela oil. Trump has said that that the U.S., I put in parentheses Venezuela because it's Venezuela oil. It says that the oil is open for business and they will sell to China and Russia. Western media claims China got embarrassed. That's the narrative, like I was talking about, that I've been seeing, is that China got embarrassed by this attack because they had their officials there and they do work with Venezuela and so on and so forth. My perspective, my view on it is they don't care. They work with Venezuela for the oil. It's a drop in the bucket for what oil or for what China uses Venezuela for. I don't believe that they honestly care that bad. Are they maybe angry or something like that? Possibly, if they didn't know ahead of time. But I don't think it's that dramatic. And then we also have claims of China and United States having trade deal of Venezuela for Taiwan. And so the other narrative that you're going to be seeing a lot of lately is, well, now that United States has Venezuela, what's stopping China from taking Taiwan? This is the whole China taking Taiwan thing that we've been hearing for what, 13 years? You know, the back and forth with Taiwan. Well, they're a part of it. They're not. They're a part of it. They're not. And it's been ongoing. But for the past couple years, it's heated up where China is going to take Taiwan back, type of thing. That's the thing that we're starting to see now. Is now it's open door for China to take Taiwan. I'm still standing by my perspective on it. Highly doubtful. Now, again, I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I know for a fact. I still just don't see it. But that's my perspective. Tomorrow, we could read in the news that China takes Taiwan. We could read that. That could happen tonight. Who knows? But it's my perspective on it. Then it says, so a couple questions worth keeping tabs on. Will Venezuela oil actually keep going to China? We'll keep an eye on that and see what happens going forward. Will Latin American countries start purchasing Chinese weapons? So this is if you're on the view of China's going to retaliate in some type of way. What's the best way of retaliation? Selling weapons to Latin American countries who need to protect themselves from big bad United States. So those are just a couple of things if you're on that perspective of that. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. These are just questions to keep in our mind as we watch these things unfold. Will this cause an effect on future rare earth deals? So we know that there's been a lot of back and forth regarding rare earth materials from China to the United States and stuff. Will this affect that? Who knows? Could Chinese officials, and this is where things start getting a little bit, shady, but we've seen it before in the past. Could those Chinese officials have been involved in locating Maduro for the United States? Could they have been there for this meeting at this time to have a pinpointed location for Maduro so it was an easy in and out for the special forces? A lot of people would say there's no possible way that would happen. I would tell you to go take a look at history and tell me that after you read through about 100 years of military history. That stuff happens all the time, especially if you're somebody who believes in my direction that United States, China, and Russia are working together. That could easily be something that happens. Again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but it is a possible question. So that's what's going on with China. What about Russia? This is where I think we find a lot of answers. Let's take a look. What about Russia? In 2019, Fiona Hill, who was Trump's ex-Russia advisor, testified that the Russian government would make a swap of Venezuela for Ukraine. Everybody knows that China had a working relationship with Venezuela for the oil, but the ones who had serious political control of Venezuela was Russia. And in 2019, Fiona Hill, who was Trump's ex-Russia advisor, testified that the Russian government would make a swap. United States gets Venezuela, Russia gets Ukraine. Let's take a look at this. This is the transcript of Fiona Hill's testimony in front of Congress, October 14th, 2019. She says, and I am also told by Amos and other colleagues that they had some linkages. So I also want to, get to step back at this period. This is, in March, April, into May, where we were having a standoff over Venezuela. And the Russians at this particular juncture were signaling very strongly that they wanted to somehow make some very strange swap arrangement between Venezuela and Ukraine. This was 2019, Fiona Hill, Trump's Russia advisor. In other words, this is where it gets interesting. In other words, if we were going to exert some semblance of the Monroe Doctrine, the thing that the Trump administration just pulled out of their back pocket a month ago that they haven't mentioned once since or before that, this was a deal that was in the making in 2019 with Russia, Venezuela, Ukraine, United States, Trump, and the Monroe Doctrine. In other words, if we were going to exert some semblance of the Monroe Doctrine of, Russia keeping out of our backyard hemisphere, because this is after the Russians had sent in these 100 operatives essentially to, basically secure the Venezuelan government to preempt what they were obviously taking to be some kind of U.S. military action. They're basically signaling, you have your Monroe Doctrine, you want us out of your backyard. Well, we have our own version of this. You're in our backyard in Ukraine. And we were getting that sent to us kind of informally through channels. It was in the Russian press, various commentators. And I was asked to go out to Russia in this time frame to basically tell the Russians to knock this off. I was given a special assignment by the National Security Council with the agreement that the State Department to get the Russians to back off. There's multiple spots in this testimony. We're not going to go through all of it, where she makes reference to this Venezuela-Ukraine land swap with the Russians and the Monroe Doctrine several more times during this 2019 testimony. Let's keep going, shall we? This transactional land swap between friends, we know they're friends, even though the theater and the narrative says otherwise. We know that they're friends, Trump and Putin. Would be a risk-free deal, providing both Trump and Putin what they want, and Trump then gets his peacemaker title. If he ends the war, he gets the peacemaker moniker, and the Venezuelan takeover would be risk-free, which, after what we saw last night, was. Because not a shot was fired at those low-flying helicopters that if they invaded any country that was actually taking it as an attack, would have caused severe damage. But it wasn't. It was risk-free. This Venezuelan deal would also be in line with the recently revived Monroe Doctrine, which Trump has now renamed to the Donroe Doctrine. I kid you not. Go watch the video. He says it in his press conference. Now, to add some validity to Fiona Hill's testimony, Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky also confirmed Fiona's testimony in 2020 on a Russian state TV, stating, he's talking about Trump, he will take Venezuela, we will take Ukraine. He'll say, look, Venezuela, then tomorrow I take Cuba. So Fiona Hill, Trump's Russian advisor, said in 2019 that they've been working on this land swap deal with Russia that involves the Monroe Doctrine that they've been pushing. Then, a year later, Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky says the exact same thing, confirming her testimony about the land swap deal, and then says, tomorrow, I'll take Cuba. Interesting. Because just coming out, it says, after capturing Maduro, Trump hints at military action in Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia, the Western Hemisphere, the backyard, the Monroe Doctrine, confirming what Russian politician said in 2020. All a little too coincidental, don't you think? Says, hours after the U.S. invaded Venezuela to seize President Nicolas Maduro, President Trump sent a warning to the governments of Mexico, Cuba, and Colombia that their countries would be next. A stunning attack on Caracas follows Trump's recent assertion of his own version of the Monroe Doctrine, and the president's comments that the U.S. is not afraid to put boots on the ground in the country suggest that the administration won't hesitate to have an ongoing presence in the region. I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, Trump said when asked how the Caribbean country should be interpreting the Venezuelan operation. It also says the president also doubled down on his criticism of Colombian President Gustavo Petro, and has previously claimed that the Latin American country has at least 3 major cocaine factories, which again, he doesn't care about the drugs. He pardoned the drug lord from Honduras who imported 400 tons of it into the United States. This has to do with something much bigger. Geopolitical power shift. The world is going to be shifting. It says, earlier Saturday, Trump told Fox News' Fox and Friends that something's going to have to be done with Mexico in response to a question about America's southern neighbor. Colombia, Cuba, and Mexico were among the countries denouncing the U.S. operations in Venezuela, saying that the attack put the region's stability at risk. Whole lot of quinky dink. That's a lot of smoke for there not to be an ember of some type. Let's keep going. What about Russia? When the United States attacked Venezuela, Vice President, now President, Delcy Rodriguez was in Russia. Think about that. At the time of the U.S. attack in Venezuela to snatch up President Maduro, the vice president, who is now working with the United States, who there's rumors that she made a backdoor deal, she was in Russia during the attack. The same country that apparently has had a deal on the table with the United States to take over Venezuela. Pretty interesting. Delcy's brother, Jorge Rodriguez, who's the head of the National Assembly, was in Caracas at the time to take care of the immediate aftermath before Delcy made it back into the country. Now, a couple of bits of pieces of history regarding the ties. Russia has deep ties to Venezuela officials and oil magnates in the region. Russia's Wagner Group has a history of running personal security for Maduro. Now, we don't have confirmation that it's the same Russian security that was working for Maduro at this moment in time, but if it was, they just immediately stand down. Many of Venezuela's anti-air launchers, the ground-to-air launchers, were Russian. And they just happened to be offline last night during the attack. If this long-time plan did just begin, if this deal did just begin, this adds more validity to the Monroe Doctrine, the Hemisphere Policy, the military consolidation, and even the Core 5 concept. Now it's time to watch Ukraine. A lot of coincidences. And so finishing this off, what now? These are just questions and things that we should probably be watching as we go forward from this situation. What is going on? So what now? Here's some stuff. So first up, pay attention to what happens with Ukraine. We'll see how this turns out and see if there is an actual land swap, a deal that takes place. So we'll see what happens there. Also, escalating action appears in the Western Hemisphere. So this is escalating action. We just saw it in Venezuela. That we were told from the Trump administration was going to happen. Part of their Monroe Doctrine and so on and so forth, controlling the hemisphere, the backyard. So what happens with Cuba, Mexico, and Latin America? Definitely need to be paying attention to what's going to be happening there. Couple questions we got. Was resurfacing talk about Greenland before this a signal for coming events? So we know earlier in the year, very early in the year, Trump was talking about snagging Greenland as the 52nd state, because we know that he was saying Canada 51st, Greenland 52nd type of thing. And everybody said, that's just Trump being Trump. He's just joking. He's just trolling the media. And then all of a sudden it went quiet for the rest of the year until December. And then in December, Trump started mentioning Greenland again. And then this happens. Is this a signal for possible events? Was this a signal for Greenland saying, you're going to join us if you don't want this to happen? We don't necessarily know, but it's interesting timing right there. We got to keep track what deals will be made between the United States and China. So we know that there's going to be, whether legitimate or just publicity stunt, we don't necessarily know. There's probably going to be some movement between United States and China when it comes to deals. So it's always worth just keeping an eye on all that stuff. I threw this one in there because Iran is still kind of a question mark in regards to this, because we know they're involved with Venezuela. Was Netanyahu involved with this? And will it signal for more involving Iran? Why I put that is because just a few days before this event took place, Netanyahu was meeting with Trump. So we'll see what happens that. And then immediately following that meeting, Trump threatens Iran because of the protests happening over there. And then just a few days later, this happens with Venezuela, who works with Iran. So maybe Netanyahu knew about it. They're coordinating times on things with Iran and stuff. We don't know. It's just something to keep an eye on. And then what about the Panama Canal? The Panama Canal gets interesting because that's something that China holds at the moment. And we know that Trump wants the Panama Canal as well. So we'll see what happens with that. It's worth keeping tabs on. We haven't heard them mention that in a long time. Still worth keeping tabs on. And then I want to end with this because this is something that I make emphasis on whenever there's like a conflict or a major event or something like this, that I always like to make sure that I put out there. So if you've kind of spaced out, if you've kind of checked out, I want just your attention for just a couple minutes because this is important. Guard your mind from conflict-induced sensationalism. Now is the time where there's going to be a massive influx of bad information, narratives, rumors, and quote-unquote expert-style opinions that will run wild, suffocating the truth. Whenever there's a conflict, whenever there's an event that happens, everybody and their mom starts coming out, spreading just whatever information that they can get their hands on. They don't vet anything. They don't check anything. They don't apply critical thinking or logic. They don't apply, again, the 72-hour rule on a lot of this stuff. They don't wait and see. And then they just go, well, this guy that I follow and I really like what he says, well, he's saying that this is going to happen. So naturally, that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to share this with everybody, even though he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about and stuff. And so we got to be very careful that we don't get swallowed up in that. Don't fall into that trap. Now is when it's going to increase tenfold. So guard your mind from this. Don't fall into it because it will suffocate the truth. And we don't want to get into trouble on that. And it's everywhere. Like I said, it has been a long day because I have been just sifting through all of this stuff. And it's, my word, it's chaos. It's chaos. Everybody has got a theory and an opinion and all this stuff. So we just got to be careful on that. So that's what I got for you when it comes to the Venezuela situation. Some pretty interesting things. That whole deal between the United States and Russia that has quite a bit of time behind it is pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of questions that come from this. But I still stand by what I said last time. I think this is going to be the year where we're going to start to see the status quo when it comes to world power start to change. It's going to start to shift. That's what I'm seeing. And we're again, 3 days, almost 4 days into the new year, and it appears that it's immediately starting on that. So again, for actual Bible prophecy to happen, which happens after we exit stage up, before that starts happening, it can't happen while the world sits the way that it does. It has to start changing somehow, some way. It's going to have to start changing. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing this year. Last year was the year of technology. There's still going to be technological stuff happening this year too. But last year was obviously the year about technology. I think this year is going to be the year of power shift. But I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyways, with all that in mind, again, we can watch all this stuff happen and all the crazy things happen and stuff like that, but it means nothing if you don't have Jesus Christ. and the salvation that only he can provide. And that's through his gospel, which is as simple as ABC. A is you admit that you're a sinner, the act of repentance. Metanoia, the changing of mind, turning from self to Christ, is the key to placing your belief in Jesus Christ, because how can you believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior if you don't know why you need Jesus Christ as your Savior? So it's through repentance that allows true belief in Jesus Christ. You believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only, who lived the perfect sinless life, which means he was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon his shoulders to the cross, where he took my place upon that cross, where he was crucified and he died. But because there's power in the blood of Jesus Christ, and he did exactly as he said, promised, and prophesied that he would, he defeated death and rose again on the third day. For all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. When we place our faith in Jesus Christ, we place our faith in Christ. We place our faith in the crucifixion within the spilled blood of Christ and within the finished work upon the cross. It's that finished work that tells us that there's nothing we can do to save ourselves. And it's the spilled blood that covers our sin. And it's only through Christ that we find life. And C, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we also are indwelt with the Holy Spirit, where we are given an incredible supernatural gift of prayer that allows us to communicate with our Heavenly Father. It allows us direct access to his throne room, where we get to talk to him at any moment of any day. We say, Lord God, thank you. Thank you, God, for letting us live in just an incredible time right now where we get to witness the end, the last days like never before. And we get to see your sovereignty in action. It's a hard time for a lot of people, but it's also a time that allows us to have deep faith within you. God, please be with us as we enter this new year, as we start to see the bang that it just started out with, and help us to navigate these times where things are going to be blowing up with deception and sensationalism and just crazy theories that are going to try and draw us in every which way. And God, that we ask during this period of time, during this year, that you keep us on the narrow path and focused solely on you. God, please help us to navigate these crazy times. And we ask, Lord Jesus, that you please come soon. In your holy name we pray. Maranatha, amen. Amen. All right. Absolutely crazy what's going on. I'll tell you what. All right, taking a look at some questions. We have a ridiculous amount of questions here. Wow. Okay. We'll do the best we can to get through some of these here. Let's see here. Victoria, question: what is your opinion on the Geneva Bible? I don't remember if I asked you before. I'll be honest, Victoria, I've heard of it. I know of it. I don't know anything about it. So I can't give you any answers on that. Yeah. So my apologies. I don't have anything on that. Let's see here. This is a question. This is a question. Kathy Peth, About God's will, does he control everything? Example, disease, hard times, or does he allow sin and the fallen state of mankind to just play out? Can we cut short his ordained number of days? Kathy, this is a question that many people for centuries have debated and argued and all that type of stuff. To put it in a very simple type of way, we have a sovereign God who sits above time, which is the key to all of this. It's above time, but also has given us free will. There's a lot of people out there that say we have full free will and God basically is hands off on everything, which we know is not true. And there's a lot of people out there that says, well, God is sovereign and the idea of free will is not true either. And that's where like Calvinism and stuff starts coming into place, because God created certain people who will be saved and certain people who will, be burned in hell forever. And we know that that's not true either. The fact is God is a sovereign God. He's in control of things that are happening. We know that he sits above time, and so he has seen everything that is going to happen already. He has been through it. He knows of it. And so everything is going to happen according to his prophetic plan that we read in scripture. Nothing's going to change there. But that tells us that while we have free will and we can make our own decisions and we deal with their own repercussions and consequences of those decisions and stuff like that, that he saw those things ahead of time and has taken steps in order to utilize them for his glory, for our good, and for whatever happens next accordingly. So the question of does God control everything or are we entirely on our own really isn't the question. The question comes down to, has God already seen everything and knows how it's going to play out? And that includes the decisions through our own free will, and through his sovereignty has made sure that he has accounted for all of that and made moves accordingly. That is where the answer lies. And that's where the confusion tends to come into place. So hopefully that answers your question in regards to that. The Hyler's question, what's your view on the scripture that talks about the fig tree? Oh boy. What's your view on the scripture that talks about the fig tree generation and Israel becoming a nation? The fig tree generation that's referenced to Matthew, that a lot of people take entirely out of context to try and predict when the rapture is going to happen and stuff like that. Is that the one you're talking about? The fig tree generation, if you read it in context, according to what is being spoken of by Jesus in Matthew, is specifically talking about the generation that will exist during the time of Jacob's trouble. So if you are the generation that is there at the beginning of the time of Jacob's trouble, you will be the generation that will see all these things come to pass. That is the fig tree generation. The fig tree generation is not what all these people out there that do sensational rapture date setting stuff. Some of them have their channels literally named after it. They're the ones that get it wrong, saying that it's a generation that lasts 60 years. Nope, now it's 70 years. Nope, now it's 80 years. And they keep moving the goalpost in order to fit their theory that is out of context of scripture. So the fig tree generation is the one that will be through the Daniel's 70th week. As far as Israel becoming a nation, 1948, and I think that's the Isaiah prophecy. Yes, I believe that's what that means in regards to that. So hopefully that answers that question. Context is so key. Lori S. Question, does the U.S. now own Venezuela? Yes, they do. They just went and took it because they felt like it. Maccabee's question, do you see a connection with the timing of Maduro and Soleimani? You're on exactly 6 years later. I've seen that theory kind of getting passed around here and there when I was doing my research. It's possible. I don't think that was like a thing that needed to happen. but it's possible. They do things with times and dates and stuff like that. Not to the extent that, again, a lot of these people take it, but it's possible. It is pretty interesting. It's 6 years later, but what does 6 have to do with anything? That's the thing. Just randomly 6. That's where my whole thing goes. It's not worth putting any emphasis on, but who knows? Doc, question, thoughts on how uprising in Iran plays in the Bible prophecy? Well, Bible prophecy doesn't mention anything about protests and uprising in Iran pre things that happened prophetically. So it would just be guessing as to what this leads into, which nobody really knows. So I would have to answer, as of right now, it may or may not play into something prophetically in the future. But as of right now, again, we don't have Bible prophecy that's actually unfolding. So it doesn't really fit on that one. Doc, question. Why is Maduro indicted in New York City? Why not Miami, Atlanta, DC? It has something to do with, it's a lot of legalese jargon that I honestly, to tell you the truth, I can't remember half of it. But there's a specific reason why they're doing it in New York for a couple of legal reasons. I can't remember what they are. I'm sorry. So I can't help you on that one. Penny H, what do you think they are? Why do you think that they are planning on hiring all of the ICE agents? We've been covering this for a long time. We covered a little bit today. The best I can give you is I think that they're planning for some future thing to happen in this country to move things forward in locking down this country. I don't have any specifics or details or tell you what that could be. I would just be throwing, darts at a board. So I don't really have an answer for you. It would just be pure speculation. Let's see here. Cindy J, question. Do the cops also have access to banking information and more, particularly monetary activities too? Seen something on this also recently. Palantir program. Like if you're at a traffic stop and the cops are using Gotham to run you through their thing, they're not getting your financial stuff like that. No, that's not what that's for. If you start going deeper into more federal things, then yes, they have access to that. But yeah, no, like a regular cop's not going to have access to your monetary stuff. That's not what that's for. Because they don't need access to that. Doc, any update on the MIT professor murder? Haven't seen any media follow up on the Trump media and the fusion energy company. The whole murder is so chilling. All the information I've got is what I presented a few episodes back. I haven't seen any updates or progression on that front, Doc. So everything that I know, I've shared with you in a few episodes back. So that's all I got, unfortunately. We'll see if anything else comes out. Jellyfish question. Did you see Trump's speech on our last Christmas, or was that to the Democrats last Christmas? I don't know anything about that, Jellyfish. I don't know anything about last Christmas. Sorry. Was that recently? Was that like this year or something like that? I don't know anything about it. Patrick Star question. Do you think an invasion of Colombia or Mexico could be possible in 2026? Yeah, I do. I would think, based on trends of information that I've seen, Colombia would one that I could see a Venezuela situation happening where the United States just goes in and takes it. I could see that. I could see the same thing with Cuba. With Mexico, I would see more of, because of the size of it and who's all involved with it, It's definitely different from like Venezuela and Colombia and stuff like that. I would see possibly like the thumb getting put down on Mexico until there's a switch, a change, and they fold into the United States plan. I wouldn't see, it could happen, but I don't see like boots on the ground or anything like that happening in Mexico. I think it would be a pressure situation and then they flip type of deal. So, but who knows? Colombia, absolutely. I could see them going in and doing the same thing they just did with Venezuela. It would take a couple hours and it would be done. So we'll see. To serve the Lord question, do you think it's Greenland's next? I keep an eye on it. I kind of went over that on things to watch. Timing of when they brought Greenland back up again, and just before they did what they did in Venezuela feeds towards something interesting. So we'll see. Iraq question, does Iran also not have a central bank? I believe, I could be mistaken. I believe Iran is I think the Rothschilds are involved with Iran's central bank. Yeah, because if you look in the structure of their government, Iran's government is controlled by the Freemasons. That's without a doubt. So if they're involved with the government in that way, I would believe that the Rothschilds are involved with the bank too. I'd have to actually look though, but I believe that's true. It's been a long time since I've looked into it. So I think so. I think they're Rothschild owned. So, all right, guys. Yeah, Iraq, I thought they were one of the last. They could be, but again, I'm not sure. There's some lists that are around about who's left and stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure because Iran's government has been cracked by the Freemasons. But maybe not. I'm not sure. I'd have to actually go and check. So don't take my word for it. All right, guys, that's all I got. Thank you guys for joining me today. You guys got a lot. There's some good questions in there. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me today. Usual spiel, if you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, I'd certainly appreciate it. Again, our goal is to try and be the bridge of people looking for the truth and the answers and some idea of what's going on and bridge them to Jesus Christ, because that is what matters. That is all that matters. And so liking, sharing, and subscribing does help reach those people. So please do me a solid and like, share, subscribe. You guys can also follow Rumble and Telegram. Rumble is a backup channel that I do backup live streaming on. And then Telegram posts updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. So follow over there if you want to. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. I understand. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date. Everything happening with the Wretched Watchmen world of things. I don't know. Yeah, just bookmark the website. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams are always there. Announcements are there, and stay up to date on what's going on with that. The free book to download and all the other things. So make sure you guys go ahead and bookmark that page. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel, what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and Give, Send, Go. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views. I don't do paywalls. I don't do subscriptions. I don't sell things. I don't do any of that type of stuff. It runs solely off of your guys' generous hearts and donations, and that's what makes it free. And that's what allows us to do what we do and get the gospel out to as many people as we can. So thank you guys for your support and your blessings. And I appreciate it. Again, I can't thank you guys enough. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. So, but that's it. So tomorrow's Sunday. Get your wretched, heathenic, misfit booties to church tomorrow, whether online or in person. Doesn't matter as long as it's a Bible-believing, Christ-following church. That's the important part. And if the Lord does not come back by Tuesday, same time, same place, I'll meet you guys right back here. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.